we'll start with the budget itself. The process always fascinates me. We're recording now on June 10th. What's happening right now? Who is in the room? And what's
fascinates
you
or frustrates you? Because a lot of times it frustrates me.
The further it goes into June, and then if it gets into July, I'm frustrated. But right now it fascinates me. Who's in the room?
Well, primarily in the room that I'm meeting with are the leaders of the House and the Senate in the majorities.
Are you in the room
yes.
at this point?
Well,
or your people?
No, we have meetings of the leaders and myself on the Republican Party. I'm going to be meeting with the Democrat leaders also, but it's the Republican Party that's going to, in the House and the Senate, make up a lot of the votes on what the budget is. My staff and their staffs have been meeting on a regular basis, and those meetings continue to intensify as we go along. As you know, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. It'll be 2 weeks Wednesday that the House finally introduced a budget. Not quite what we asked for, a little bit different than what we asked for, but it now has to go to appropriations and comes out of appropriations. I mean, my frustration is, let's move these things along sooner. My budget was introduced on February the 8th, I think it was. We had a series of hearings. Matt, you covered many of them. Those hearings are in both the House and the Senate. Then it kind of goes into a void for a while, and then all of a sudden there's a budget produced in late May. And I would have liked to have seen something much sooner than that.
And then there's a mad rush in June to push it through.
Yes. And we may be seeing floor debate in the House this week on the budget bill itself. Is that giving you enough time to work with to hammer out those details and the differences between the various chambers, the various caucuses, and yourself?
Well, that's what's happened in the last 2 years, where we've come down to these last few weeks. I would much prefer to have pretty much the guidelines of what we're going to do in May. What happens is the legislature likes to see what the May revenues are, and that's when they start looking forward to putting things in. So, but that's adjustable. I mean, my frustration is we weren't doing more in May than we have been.
Well, let's talk about those revenues, because when we chatted last month, we were facing what appeared to maybe be a $500 million hole when we talk about less than expected revenues this year and multiply that times 2 into next year. May was another positive revenue month for the state. So how are we looking revenue strength-wise moving forward?
Well, we're still looking at a hole that we have to figure out how to fix. I continue to encourage them to look at the spending side of this. But you're right, as we go forward into next year, it just grows even more. You know where I look at the issue. We've got to resolve the pension, because that's where $600 million of new revenue money, 60 cents on every dollar of new revenue that we bring in, is going to the pensions. And one of the things that I have said since May 8th is we have to address the pension crisis that's facing us. We've gone around. I've gone around. My budget secretary, Charles Zogby, and I have gone and met with just about every major newspaper editorial board. We've gotten consensus from them that this is something that we have to fix. I will often hear members of the various unions say, well, it's not fair. I look at it from the taxpayer standpoint. It's not fair to the taxpayers to continue to put this burden on them when they didn't have any role in this and received really no benefit as compared to when the changes were made in 2001. People may receive tremendous benefits for not doing anything new for their prior service. So
the taxpayers had a role in that. Their elected representatives came up with
that's
this.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the decisions that were made in the past are the ones that are affecting us now. But we are at a point that if we do not fix this, not only are we at state government going to look at shortages, but the school districts of Pennsylvania are looking at shortages. And many of the tax increases that you see school districts asking for are based upon the fact that they, too, have to, under the system, put into the pensions that our bill would help address and alleviate, not wipe out, but alleviate to a certain extent. So what we know is 1/3 of the school districts of Pennsylvania are already coming to the Department of Education asking for a waiver of the requirement to have a referendum if they want to increase their taxes above a certain millage increase from what they had the year before.
You segued in the exact direction I was going to
like
go.
that?
Pension
And
reform was next.
We didn't even talk about
We
it.
do not compare notes beforehand, but pension reform was next on the list. And I wanted to ask you, are you going to make pension reform a mandatory part of this budget process? In other words, if it's not in the budget,
always love to
are
have
you
me
going
negotiate
to?
against myself on the radio. We're not going to do that. It is. I have repeatedly said I want to see all three on my desk with the budget by June 30th.